Hi, my name's Jason Barcham. I'm an associate partner with Servian, New Zealand. Welcome to the Technology Whisperers, a technology and innovation podcast brought to you by Servian with your hosts Alistair Ross and Sean Muller. Join us as we demystify the latest emerging innovative technologies for businesses of all shapes and sizes, sharing our thoughts on how you can improve your current technologies, practices and processes to transform your business.
Welcome back to the Technology Whisperers. I am so chuffed, so pleased to be rejoined by Amanda to, again, talk to us about something that is, in my mind, is hugely important for people in the workplace, especially today with the shortage of workers that we have in information technology space, but it really goes across it. So we're going to have a really exciting episode today. Unfortunately, Alistair couldn't join us today, but he will be back for a future episode. In fact, I think he and I have one planned for later this week. So, Amanda, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Sean.
So what are we talking about in this?
So what we're going to discuss today, as you know, I'm here representing one of my passions, which is Tech Women New Zealand, Women in Technology. And we are running a program that is very close to my heart, as well as yours, as you've been part of this as well with me, which is returning to IT, returning to technology. And I've also noticed that we're not the only ones doing this. So Cognizant has a returnship program. Servian is doing something similar. And Microsoft does something called Returnity, which is returning after maternity. So there's an awful lot out there. And although our program, which focuses on career beginners, which I'll go into soon, career developers and career establishers, it's not just about women coming into the workplace after they've been away. It is also the family unit. It's support around that. It's how, our partnership in relationships or extended family. And so that's what I'd like to talk about today. So it's quite a big topic, but I'm going to try and break it down into chunks.
So why is this a problem? I mean, if someone, say someone takes time off from maternity or paternity leave and maybe wants to stay with the child till they're 2 or 3, the most formidable years for the child, or, they just decide, I've seen some people that burn out of their roles and they go and they work in the Caribbean as a bartender for, a year or two to get their head back on straight and to balance everything. And then they come back. They should just be able to walk back into their role, right? I mean, there's not a problem with that, right? Can they just pick up where their career left off, or?
Oh, if only. If it did, we wouldn't have this program. Well, So I'll break it down. So I personally have I've done 2 parts of this role: the career beginner in IT, and I came to it late. And the career developer, I've done the maternity, and now I'm in the career establisher phase. So career, if we take it in order, and I'll tell you my personal story and then link it through. I went into IT, a company called 3Com. Do you remember them?
Oh, yes, I have quite a bit of experience with 3Com.
So I went into that company on end user sales call, and we were remarkably close to the name 3M, which is the Post-it note brand.
Yes.
So the amount of phone calls I took for stationery, office stationery, versus do you have a hub, do you have a router, that sort of thing. So I came into it quite late. I was 29. I'd done my acting, world. I'd sung and lived in Spain and the Canary Islands. And I came back and I ended up as a career beginner quite late in my life, wasn't at graduation or anything, and came into IT and have been here ever since. And so I went on that journey of having my skill set was communication, talking, friendly, listening, and I could sell ice to an Eskimo. You know, even though by nature I'm not a hunter, you know, I'm all about the connection and the relationship. And so I succeeded quite quickly because I had the age, the maturity, the experience, and the skill set to take me from taking end user calls to being an account manager, and then 18 months later, a distribution channel account manager with, you know, millions and millions of dollars, like $73 million, I think was my target through distribution.
Yep.
So that was a really good example of a career, you know, beginner with transferable skills. And I think I went about it quite sensibly. I had a lovely young boss who was younger than me, and he drew this wonderful triangle on the board in my interview, and he was like, this is our gold partners, this is our silver partners, this is our bronze partners, and blah, 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 blah. And after about 10 minutes, I just looked at him and went, I don't know what the triangle is, but if you want me to sell it, just point me to a phone. And I got the job, you know, so it's those transferable skills. So that's what we're talking about in Tech Women. Our first section, which is up live on Tech Women New Zealand, it's on the landing page, you can go through, and it talks about, are you a graduate, you know, like our Caleb and Erin experience, and obviously Caleb's done Technology Whisperers, so there's that aspect. We have you yourself, you've contributed. What do I look for when I'm bringing someone into my team? The transferable skills.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and those gifts that they have that they can bring to the table.
Let's break down what you mean by transferable skills a little bit, because you did touch on them, but I'd like to go in a little bit deeper to them, because I understand what you're talking about, but I think a lot of times. So sometimes somebody comes in for an interview and they don't have, you know, the bolded, underlined skills that I'm particularly looking for, but they have skills that are transferable over. And as an interviewer or even a manager, if I don't understand that, then oftentimes I miss out on a really great candidate that can come in and really do some awesome stuff. So when you talk about transferable skills, break that down a little bit for me.
Yeah, sure. And I'll pick up on what you just said. I think this is, do you remember at the beginning of our conversation you said, why can't people just walk into the job?
Right.
So one of the sections that requires review and responsibility is the corporate company there, which is we'll touch on as well, which COVID has really helped with, because you can't go wide, you have to go deep, and you have to expand. So we can touch on that as well. So managers need to understand when somebody comes in with items that are listed on a CV, how far is that going to get your team culture, your company success, how they're going to fit in the values? And that's where considering their transferable skills. So, for example, if you've got a service delivery manager who wants to be an account manager, they have communication skills, they have dealing with crisis skills, they have pulling people together, managing, you know, bridges of people communication to get to an outcome through a problem, change management. They understand process. So even though they haven't sold, in inverted commas, they understand all the aspects that keeps a customer happy. And those are transferable. Because you need skills that are transferable that might also not be able to be taught. You can be taught a lot of things. But there are also some things that you come naturally with that heighten your ability to do the role.
So we really talk on this podcast about demystifying. Let's see if we can make this a little bit easier for people. So if I'm a manager and somebody comes in with a CV, what am I looking for on that? What are they going to be putting on their CV that should be that I should be going, oh, I need to dig into this. This might be a transferable skill. And kind of conversely, if I'm coming to a role and I know that I might have some of these transferable skills, what should I put on that CV to highlight the fact that I'm...
Well, absolutely. And I think from your perspective from hiring, you've got like a wonderful perspective to add more depth to that as well. From my perspective, I would encourage everybody to go to the bottom and see if they've travelled.
Yeah.
Admittedly, that may have only been around New Zealand in the past 18 months to 2 years. But travel brings around a huge amount of responsibility, experience, communication, and being, solo reliable. So you have to rely on yourself, and you have to learn how to communicate in a different country. You have to learn how to travel that country. You have to learn how to navigate your way through something new. And that normally gives you I would always be looking for as well, how long, I don't believe that long tenure in a company is necessarily a good or a bad thing. But I do think it's a great mark if you can see somebody in a role but slightly changing their role, growing their role and adding bits to it, because I think that shows that they want to do more, develop more, they're open to more. What's your perspective on that?
Well, I think you're right. This is one of those ones. I interviewed someone about 6 months ago, and they had worked for the same company for about 15 years, and they only had one role description. But when I talked to him, that was only the last role they had did with the company. But his comment to me was, if I put all the things I did over 15 years in it, that would be like 6 pages long, and I've been told that my CV should be 4 pages. And I said, that's fine. Then each one of your roles created as another job in it to communicate to me that you've changed roles or jobs within the company. It's okay that you didn't change companies. By the way, I agree with you that it's not a positive or a negative. There are positives to both sides. If you have somebody that changes jobs every 3 months, then by talking with them, oftentimes I'll say, do you do a lot of contracting work? Do you do a lot of small works? Do you run basically your own business as yourself? That's a really positive thing to do. The flip side of it is that, like you said, they might have been in the same company, which says they're dedicated to that company. They have a lot of respect for the company. They have loyalty to the company. But it just may be that their career progression has now gotten to the point where they're ready to go and do something else. And there's not an opportunity within that company. But teasing that out, it is kind of a discussion thing. And it's not as simple as boiling it down to a hacker rank or I'm going to bombard you with technical questions to figure this out. It's more of a conversation you have to have with them about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that opens this up to a few things. So the first one, we were talking about career beginner. What should people target? So if you've been traveling for 18 months, then you highlight that, and you make sure that you talk about it in your interview. If you've been a barista and you're applying for a role in a call center, then you talk about, I've got interaction skills, communication, financial, because I managed the money. I had managerial experience because I managed everybody on a Wednesday. These are all transferable skills.
Well, even if you're a stay-at-home mom, right? I mean, a stay-at-home mom
we'll get to that.
has massive amount of managerial skills and communication skills and planning skills and everything else. And, I remember back when I first got into IT, which is going back 30 years now, what we heard in schools is that when you filled out your CV, if there was a gap, you made sure you explained it why the gap was there. Now, you explained it, but you didn't go into any detail. And I think that's changed now. I think now, not only do you don't have to explain the gap, you have to talk about what you did in that gap between the two roles. And if that's
absolutely
2 years raising, a 2-year-old, there's a bunch of skills in that you could be including in that job role.
Yeah, so this comes into the big section, career developers, and that's our bit around maternity and paternity, right? And so how do we support people is a big conversation. So I always start off so recently I did Tech TV last Monday on exactly this topic, and the host, David, read out my information that I'd written on the email, and he went, "This is amusing," he said, "because it's written here that women are the only part of the partnership that have the uterus and really should be, supportive of that." And I laughed, and he went, "Did you write that, Amanda?" And I was like, "Yeah, I did." I said, "But it's true. Shouldn't be penalised for being the only half of this partnership that is working supplying the economy and carrying a child. And then for 6 months minimum, we're at home, connected to that child, raising a family, and this section is really big and really deep. And so I'm going to touch on a few topics. And this is what we're working on now in our Tech Women Return to IT program, because Return to Tech. So it's huge. There's legal aspects, there's HR aspects, there's confidence aspects. How do you return back to work as a mum who's been off? You've sat down with your husband and your extended family, your support group, right? Because as we know, it takes a village to raise a family and work. May I say, right? So for us, when we are carrying a baby, a great man, great husband is an observer and a partner, and our body goes through those changes. And businesses and corporates need to become much more aware that these physical changes are growing a person. We touch on that a bit like washing at the moment, how you greenwash stuff, but we don't really understand. But now that we have much more women in IT, in CEO roles or senior leadership roles, they get it. They've walked the walk. They're not an observer talking the talk. They've walked the walk, they've carried it, they've got up at 4:30 a.m, they've gone to the office at 6 a.m, their boobs have leaked, they've had to go and express at 11 a.m, they're driving home in rush hour, boobs are still leaking, they go home, have those 2 hours with their baby, someone else has been looking after it. So if you make a choice to stay at home as well, you're talking about those transferable skills again. And I'm going to point to Michelle and Tash, who are two of the best examples of this, because they run their lives around being incredible mothers and successful women in our business, right?
Oh, absolutely.
They get up at stupid o'clock, they walk the dog, they go to CrossFit, they come back, they make their children's breakfast, they take the kids to school, they fit in an hour's work before they take them to school. They sit down, they work from 9 till 3, then they take them to dance lesson, then they take them to ballet lesson, come home, make dinner, sit down, do some work. They have absolutely created a life of balance, which is exhausting, but they've had to create. And they have supportive partners with them, Kevin and Joe, helping their partners, taking 4 days a week instead of 5 days a week, working that out with our HR. These are things that are pioneering, that support the baby making side. And we have to move into this world in much more depth. And sorry, I'm on a roll now. And the transferable skills. If you stayed at home for 4 years, you have crisis management. Where are my leggings, Mum? I need to be at ballet in like 2 seconds. Where are my pink ones without the hole? Crisis management. You've got a holistic environment. You understand where's baby Emma, where's little Jack, who's got rugby, who's got ballet, are they in the uniforms, are they in the dryer, are they in the wash, who's got a birthday party afterwards, it's 5 o'clock in the evening, who needs to have a sleepover, who's coming over, what do we need to prepare for tomorrow? Boom. So you've got all this task management, social calendar, nurturing. You've got a holistic perspective of what's going on. You've got financial management, time management. All of these things come into a team and create a much better environment. You may have, as a woman, had your career impacted because you have taken 2 or 4 or 6 years off. And you are now technically behind. But that doesn't mean that your skill set of what you can do is behind. It just means that you're going to work harder in 6 months to catch up than other people that have been in that job for the 6 years that you took off. And the women that we see in our company are proof of that.
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't disagree in any way, shape, or form. I think so. Servian in New Zealand is I think we have a little bit better approach on how we deal with it, and so oftentimes when the HR team or the talent acquisition team goes out and looks at people, they're asking those questions.
Yeah.
I think that if your talent team within your organization is not thinking about that, and by the way, large organizations, Servian in New Zealand is not a large organization. I mean, you have experience working at 3Com. That's a large organization. I have experience working with large organizations. Oftentimes, the talent acquisition or the HR people don't even understand the jobs they're posting roles for.
Correct.
So they tend to default to, okay, what certifications do they have? How long have they worked in that job? Do they have a college degree? Do they have gaps in their CV? And what they do is they get a stack of CVs, and anything that doesn't fit those square pegs, they just bin them.
Well, you said now it's all done by AI and...
Oh, yeah. So it's even worse. So in the United States and Europe, a lot of those organizations are now going to, because what's happening is the stack of CVs is double what it was 5 years ago.
And now it's electric, obviously.
Yes.
It's all electronic.
And so what's happening is they're using algorithms to pre-filter what the HR people see, but then the HR people feel. So it's, how do you write an algorithm that looks at it and says, this person learned crisis management because they were a mom for 2 years?
Yeah.
Unless the person that is filling out their CV puts in there, I did crisis management with a little paragraph of how I did crisis management, there's no way for the algorithm to get it.
Yeah.
So the two pieces of that are, and this is important, if you are returning to work, you need to be thinking about all these things that you did, and don't undersell yourself in these skills that you've picked, and highlight them. And if you're on the hiring side, whether you're a manager, talent acquisition, HR, large organization, you need to be thinking about how these people will make your organization more rounded, more resilient, more successful in the long run than everybody being the same square peg that fits in a square hole.
And you are so right. And what I've noticed, and maybe you have as well, like Servian does this quite well.
Oh, yeah.
Servian New Zealand, Jane, our HR manager, is very nurturing and empathetic.
Oh, absolutely.
Empathetic. So she's and Stu, obviously, and the SLT, all the management, we create a like-for-like environment where you have a lot of people with the same values. But what we're talking about on a wider scale is absolutely what you said. There's a couple of points to this. One is the people that are hiring, and I go back to my original conversation with Matt Hadlow all that time ago. How do you attract in people who are returning to work? And that's in the wording, in the job descriptions.
Oh, of course.
There are ways to do that you can Google. So, and for our people that are returning to work or returning to IT, returning to tech after maternity, don't be humble about what you've experience for 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, because your technical skill set, even though, yes, that has taken a knock, your personal power skill set has moved forward so much. And that needs to have the attention from hiring managers to understand, like you said, the benefits. And one of the other things that women are notoriously bad at doing is backing themselves. We have programs like Dare to Lead by Brené Brown, Lead with Vulnerability, Women Rising with Microsoft, which is saying to women, because we're trying to navigate a world in which we are business people, we are mothers, we are wives, we are, daughters with older parents, or, we have all of these things, and our brain is wired to be more cautious. Whereas men's brains are developed to be more forward moving, because you were hunters, right? Back in the day, a long time ago. So we have nature and nurture there, and we have physiology as well. So there's a lot of aspects to this, and I don't think personally that, I can't talk for America or England, but I think New Zealand government needs to push forward. I can see it I can see it going that way, but there still isn't enough understanding, or maybe women in high leadership roles, to push that aspect forward, because it is a different environment now. And it's only been 80 years since we've been in business like this, or 40 in my lifetime. Yeah. You remember ball-busting, breaking 80s women with massive hair and shoulder pads that didn't have children. It's very different now. We have a prime minister, whether you vote for or not, like her or loathe her. She's a mother of a child being supported by her network and running a country. Oh, yeah.
Well, so the New Zealand government ministries are actually a perfect example of really large organizations where oftentimes the talent acquisition are aimed or geared towards hiring for whatever that ministry does, and not for IT. And so what happens is that they don't know how to hire for IT, so they default back to a templated format, and you're right, people returning to work don't fit into that templated, unless they do a lot of work in their CVs, they don't fit into that templated.
And you know what it's like to have an army of children. When are you going to do that?
Oh,
You know,
yeah,
when are you
exactly.
going to fit that in? So, yeah, I think this section's huge.
Yeah.
You know, career establisher, the maternity, paternity, extended family is massive. And if any of the listeners want to contribute, I would be really interested in that. So we'll put the link in at the...
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we love hearing about people's stories, the support they've got, the experiences that they've had around changing the way companies are hiring people, which is changing. We've got some incredible women in tech, women, the council now and members, with so much to add into this. So many successful working mothers.
Oh, yeah.
Because we do push ourselves a heck of a lot more, and I think because we feel guilty that we're taking time away from our family, you know. So there's all of this. It's not just business; it's emotions.
Right. Absolutely.
And then that leads us to the final bit.
Yep.
Career. So we've got career beginners, career developers, and career establishers. So this is my phase and our phase, Sean, which is where parents have got older. You may need to take some time off to look after the parents, or somebody.
Oh, no, hold
sick.
on. Time off?
A sabbatical, is it? Or you might go traveling for 4 months with your 2 children, you know, because they're 12 and 13 or 15 and 16, and you know it's going to be the only chance you get before you have to come back and pay for university for 10 years, you know. So this phase is all about the supporting of people that are coming back after taking 6 months off or a year off.
Right.
They've got all the skill set. You know, they've been managerial, they've done all these amazing roles. They went off and started a business.
Yeah.
They went off and made coffee for 2 years, and then COVID destroyed that. They went off and ran a business, you know.
Or they went and did the gig economy for a while, where they just picked up little contracting jobs overseas for a while. Yeah.
And so these people who, again, have exactly what we've talked about. It's all about adding on to that. What do you put on your CV? What are your transferable skills? What have you learned in those 2 years? Patience, you know, money management when you've got your own business, how to survive, you know, watching something fail and rebuild yourself. So this is another thing that we should talk about, touch on, is those power skills. Skills that are technical can be learned.
Yeah.
Resilience is something you learn through a different format. That's a life skill.
Yeah.
Communication, how to really fail at it and learn how to become much better at it.
Yeah.
Learning how to listen.
Yeah.
You know, all of these skills are power skills. Having empathy, you know, really stopping and learning everybody's name outside of your team and understanding, you know, what drives them. So all of these skills are now the human skills, power skills, used to be known as soft skills. They're all part of what you bring into your career when you return back to work.
Yeah, and we have a big problem right now in the tech industry on burnout. And I think that highlighting the fact that, you know, in that you take a year off, and in that year you learn to relax, you're less likely to burn out. That becomes a huge selling point when you come back in, if you decide you want to come back in.
Yeah.
And we accept this from large, you know, from startup entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs that go out and make several businesses. We accept the fact that they fail and that they may take a year off and then they might come back and do that. We need to be more accepting of that, of the people that want to go out and try something and then decide to come back and just, you know, I tried it, didn't work, I didn't like it, you know, I did it for a year and
it should be seen as an asset.
That's right.
Not as a failure.
That's right.
What, you stepped out of the train lines and tried something else, you know?
Exactly. Well,
why did you leave the box?
Well,
you know?
and it's so I worked for IBM for 3-4 years, and one of the things IBM really celebrated was this thing called a wild duck. And that wild duck is that person who goes in a different, you know, everybody's going this way, that wild duck goes in a different direction. And they should be celebrated.
That's brilliant. I love that.
Because they bring different perspectives and they bring different capability. And sometimes, so have you seen World War Z with Brad Pitt?
Yes.
Okay.
Terrible film.
Oh, no, it was.
Not one of my face.
In it, they talk about, you know, when he visits Israel, they talk about, and one person in the governing body has to say, no, I disagree. Everybody agrees it has to be this way. That one person, it's his job to say, what if it's not?
Yes.
And to go down a different direction. And it can be massively powerful in an organization. And we've seen some really big organizations transformed because of that one person who could do that. And stepping out of your career for a year gives you a perspective. If you stay in your career and you continue doing what you've done for the last 10, 15 years,
where's the growth?
It's very difficult to have new perspectives. And one of the things that we see, notorious...
Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt for a sec. This is why travel on the CV is really important.
Oh, absolutely.
Perspective.
It gives perspective, right? If you've never left your hometown and you've always worked at your same job, then if the company throws a curveball at you, you're not prepared to deal with it.
Absolutely.
And we see this problem a lot in IT. We go in, especially on the consulting side, we go in to help out an organization and we find people that legitimately have been in this role for 20 years and they're great people and they know the business inside and out, except they don't, because they don't know what's going on outside of the business that could transform the way that they're working.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I've seen a lot in the past 10 years are leadership teams that have been very settled and safe for a while. And when there's a mix-up, like when I've worked for a government agency, there was quite a mix-up, an addition, and they brought in Māori Pacifica and they brought in different ages and one woman, so you get your token woman and your token Māori, sorry about my terrible pronunciation, everyone. And the thing is that leading with vulnerability, Brené Brown, just quote her again, are you brave enough to have somebody that comes in and goes, well, no, what if it isn't? What if you're wrong? What if you haven't considered this? And it's only through having an agitator that you get that growth, because the people that are very comfortable in their mindsets and safe in their ivory towers, then are they brave enough to think out of the box? Are they brave enough to have a 21-year-old up there with some advice from their youth perspective?
And let's be clear, when everything is even keel, you can get away with not having out-of-the-box thinking. But we live in unprecedented times.
We're in IT, surely. Well, when's it even?
Well, so the technology changes have only accelerated over the last 15 years. In the last 2 years, we've gone through a worldwide pandemic. Climate change, whether you believe that humans cause it or not, is significant and is coming at us like a freight train. Overpopulation, the financial markets are doing some really interesting things right now. If you believe that you can just live in an even keel world and not have to deal with things outside of the box, then you might be a little bit surprised on what happens in the next 6 months to 5 years. And as an organization, your organization may not survive.
Absolutely. Now, I think we're veering off the topic a little bit of career establishers, but
it's a reason why you want those.
Absolutely.
You want those resilient people, and you want to bring people in who have had different perspectives.
And there's a lot of study around this as well.
Oh, yeah.
There's a huge amount of study around, how people cope with change and how they cope with constant, who moved my cheese and all that sort of stuff. And the skill set to adapt to that is really sought after in leadership. And so I think in career beginners, developers and establishers, anything that you have in that aspect where you've gone out and done something different and and back yourself, these are the skills that I have learned. And I think, speaking in your language a little bit, Sean, you might want to bullet point them for the AI, ML, artificial intelligence, it can pick it out and my transferable skills are, crisis management, facility management, financial management, contract management, with all the schools stuff that you have to do, that's all contracts. So there's a lot there. If you think outside the box, and you think about what am I bringing into this business, into this role, and you sit there in confidence that what you bring is going to add value to who's going to hire you, you're going to do great.
Yeah, and I think if the people that are out there that have taken a break, for whatever reason, if they get nothing else from this podcast, if they get that one statement you made, Amanda, that they feel confident that what they're bringing is going to bring a level of value. So if they can see that, if they take nothing else from this conversation but, hey, my different perspective can bring resiliency to this company, I need to put that out there, then I think this podcast will have succeeded, this episode.
Absolutely. We should have put it at the beginning.
Oh, no, the last thing they hear. The last thing they hear is the one they remember the most. So, Amanda, thank you very much for coming along. This is a huge topic. If people are interested in doing more, we'll put the links on the website. But where can they get in touch with you? Where are you available?
In my work address, or I'm on LinkedIn.
Or LinkedIn.
Amanda Watson on LinkedIn for Tech Women New Zealand, or just look me up on LinkedIn and send me a message. I would be really keen to hear from anyone, not just female, but anybody who has been a part of the process of either hiring or being a part of the returning to work as either the maternity section, that sort of the support network, or the future one that we talked about, the establishers. Have you started your own business? Have you been an entrepreneur, but you're coming back in? Did you go away for 6 months? That sort of thing. I'd love to hear from people like that. We can add to the contact. And the information's at Tech Women New Zealand, and it's Return to Tech. So the Return to Tech program.
I'll definitely make sure that we have those links in the show notes if you're interested.
Yeah, it'd be brilliant.
Thank you very much, Amanda. This has been the Technology Whisperers.